Good afternoon. I'm Richard Dennison, your District 4 trustee and board president. It is a pleasure to welcome those of you who have tuned into online at Jaseco Energy's 83rd annual meeting and our second virtual meeting. Seco Energy's bylaws and Florida statute require electric cooperatives to hold an annual meeting. However, the CDC continues to caution against large crowds. So this virtual-only meeting is our best option to minimize the risk of COVID in our local communities. The health of our members, employees, and the public are our highest priority. Thank you to the online viewers for understanding that and for joining us virtually to take part in the co-op business model. At this time, I am calling the virtual annual meeting to order, getting down to just business. I am also officially closing our voting platform so the annual meeting business votes can be tallied, and most important, the prize winners can be randomly selected. Winners will be announced at the end of today's webcast, so please stay tuned. Now I'd like to ask our Vice President of Corporate Communications, Kathleen Gloria, to lead us in the invocation and the pledge, and to introduce my fellow trustees, our CEO, and our attorney. Will everyone please rise?
Thank you, Mr. Dennison. Father, we reach out to you today in prayer and ask that you bless our afternoon of fellowship with our members and employees. We've come together in the service of our membership. And Father, we pray for open hearts and minds, and we lift up this meeting to you in your will. Bless our employees with your protection as they work, and heal those who are ill with your love and mercy. Amen. We join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, following by the national anthem. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And you see by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
That rendition of the national anthem was sung by our 35-year employee, Tim Wallace. He is our manager of consumer billing and accounting. Thank you so much, Tim. Now I'd like to introduce you to the Seco Energy Board of Trustees. If you'd please stand when I say your name. District 4 trustee and our board president, Mr. Richard Dennison. District 9 trustee and board vice president, Jerry Hatfield. District 3 trustee and secretary treasurer, Jerry Anderson. District 1 trustee, Scott Boyette. District 2 trustee, Joyce Anderson. District 5 trustee, Ray Vick. District 6 trustee, Mike Muffett. District 7 trustee, Joe Kuziak. And District 8 trustee, Bill James. Now I'd like to introduce our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Jim Duncan. SECO's attorney, Scott Gherkin, is with us this afternoon. And please welcome Nora Brown, SECO's Executive Administrator to the CEO and the board. I'd also like to introduce a new trustee-elect who will begin her duties on Monday at the following board meeting. Meet District 9 trustee-elect Morgan Hatfield. Thank you all for joining us virtually today. I'd like to invite Mr. Dennison back to the podium.
Thank you, Catherine. The next order of business is the appointment of a recording secretary for the meeting. I would like to appoint Ms. Nora Brown, Executive Administrator for the CEO and the board, who is seated behind me. No objections. I will now call on Mr. Jerry Anderson, Secretary Treasurer, for the certification of the official annual meeting notice.
Thank you, Mr. Dennison. Good afternoon, and thank you all for tuning in today. I, Gerald B. Anderson, being duly sworn, state that I am the duly elected Secretary of Sumter Electric Cooperative, Inc., and that between the dates of February 12th, 2021 and March 15th, 2021, I had mailed to each member of the cooperative with their electric bills a notice of the annual meeting of the members of the cooperative on March 25th, 2021 by United States mail. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us today. As I mentioned previously, Florida cooperatives are required by statute to hold an annual meeting. We are also required to achieve a quorum to conduct official business. With the help of a bylaws revision that you, the members, passed 2 years ago, achieving a quorum is now more efficient and inclusive. We can now count on member participation in voting on an annual meeting business, either electronically, by phone, in person, or by mail as part of the quorum. I am happy to announce that the member voting participation has indeed helped us achieve a quorum this year. And under the COVID conscious environment and a virtual annual meeting. Thank you so much to all who cast their votes this year. On behalf of the entire SECO board, I want to thank you for your membership. Our 9-member Board of Trustees is elected by you. The board sets the policies and approves the budget that guide your cooperative. The Chief Executive Officer, Jim Duncan, along with his senior staff, manages the cooperative under these policies. Our goal is to provide you with affordable, reliable service for years to come. Today, you'll hear from CEO Jim Duncan as he provides a state of the company addressed to the virtual membership. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our CEO, Mr. Jim Duncan. Jim?
President Dennison, you might know we would pick the hottest day of the year to hold this annual meeting in an outside building, so I have broken with protocol and chosen to be a little more casual today. I hope that's okay. I would like to add my welcome to the virtual audience, to that of Mr. Dennison, Ms. Gloria, and Mr. Anderson. Good afternoon. This is the 83rd annual meeting, and I have been here for almost half of them, so it's been a while. For obvious reasons, we're holding our second virtual meeting. All of us would much prefer to have this building full of members, but we had to take care of the safety of everyone and go virtual again, as we did last year. Last year, almost at the 11th hour, when COVID became an issue in our state and across the nation and literally the world, we quickly had to uninvite all of our members to the normal large meeting, create a virtual-only meeting, and move ahead with that, obviously to avoid the spread of COVID-19. This year, although things are looking a bit better in Florida and in the nation, we again decided to follow CDC guidelines and avoid a large gathering of members. So hence, looking after the well-being of our members, our employees, and our audience, we chose to go virtual again. However, if you are one of the thousands of folks who voted in this year's annual meeting business, you are automatically entered into the prize drawing, 100 prizes up for grabs, and they will be announced at the end of this meeting. They will have been drawn randomly. So stay tuned for that, and you can look on secoenergy.com for that list. If you are tuning in virtually, and I certainly hope you are, there are 3 different ways to interact with us to get your questions put before us to respond to. That would be a special phone number, which is shown on the screen, a special email address shown on the screen, or go to Facebook and go to our page there. We have a number of employees to my left who are there to take your responses and then funnel them to me at the end of the meeting to attempt to respond to. I will say, if you have an account-specific question, we won't try to answer that publicly. We will respond to you next week. Clearly, with the restrictions of COVID-19, the name of this year's meeting, Just Business, is very applicable. It fits it very perfectly. And as you'll see as we go through it, it is a very good business-only type meeting. Clearly, we all miss the days of the very large gathering in this building, but again, for safety purposes, we were not able to do that. I would like to now go into what has always been one of my favorite parts of the large in-person meeting, and that's a tribute to all the branches of our military, to all of our members who either are serving or have served in the past in the military. Normally, in this large gathering, I would ask you to stand. The service flag is displayed and your service song is played. This time I'll simply say, in the comfort of your living room, when your song comes up, stand up, be happy, cheer, whatever. So I'll stop and listen for the music. So to all of our current and past service members, thank you very much for your service. Also a special thank you to the Lake Weir High School Jazz Band for their renditions of the various service theme songs. We learned the hard way that although those are what we thought public domain, they really are copyrighted, so we had to get our own versions of them to be legal. And so thank you to that high school. Also, particularly with 2020 behind us and moving into 2021, a special thank you to all of the first responders, all of the medical personnel who have put their lives in danger to treat people who may have contacted COVID, to our local law enforcement, fire, rescue personnel, EMS, EMTs, all of the first responders who's made a career out of keeping all of us safe. So thank you, all of them, for their service. At this point, let me just say this is a somewhat bittersweet meeting for me. On a personal note, this will be my last annual meeting as CEO. Earlier this year, I announced to the board my intention to retire in early January 2022. And I figure after 42 years, I probably couldn't do any better, so I would just hang it up and let someone else take over. But after 42 years, as you might imagine, that was not an easy decision. I work with some of the best people in the industry. The board is extremely supportive. It was not an easy decision. But Connie and I have been married for 53 years, and we both felt it was time to take advantage of some of the nice things in the world. We both love scuba diving. Haven't done that for well over a year because of COVID, but we do have hope. We enjoy that. We enjoy boating. We have 3 grandchildren, 2 grown sons, so more time with family, so looking forward to that. But as you can imagine, in those 42 years, I have seen a lot of change at Seco. I started here in 1979, before a lot of you were born, as a director of accounting and finance, sort of the equivalent to chief financial officer. At that time, we went by the full name of Sumter Electric Cooperative Incorporated. Our total member count was 37,000. From 1979 to 1990, when I was promoted to CEO, we went through a very heavy growth time frame. And when I became CEO, we had 66,000 members. We celebrated 100,000 in 1999 and hit the 200,000 mark in 2017. At year-end 2020, we were serving 216,500 total members. And I predict by year-end, we will be very close to 220,000. Three decades, hard to imagine, but during that 3 decades, we have seen incredible growth in our service area, as I just shared with you. That current member count of well over 200,000 makes us the 3rd largest cooperative in Florida and the 7th largest cooperative in the nation out of over 900. Across the nation, those 900 cooperatives have a median size of 15 to 20,000 members. None of them, or very few of them, ever experienced the growth rate that we have experienced. During the recent years, we have celebrated a number of very significant customer satisfaction recognitions. Some of my proudest moments as CEO came when we were awarded 3 consecutive J.D. Power Awards in 2015, 16, and 17. In each of those 3 years, our score was the highest score in the nation out of all types of utilities that were surveyed. So very significant and very proud of that, very proud of the employees who made that happen. Looking more recently at 2020, we upheld our position as a customer satisfaction leader with our American Customer Satisfaction Index score, or ACSI. That score was 91, almost unheard of in any industry. It's phenomenal in the electric utility industry. It's really phenomenal in any industry, as I'll share with you. But in our industry, the investor-owned utilities and the municipals average 72. Cooperatives nationwide average 73. If you step outside the electric utility arena and look at some well-known household brands, Amazon came in at 83, Lexus at 82, Home Depot and Lowe's tied at 78, Bank of America 75, and my favorite fast food restaurant, Chick-fil-A, at 84. So clearly 91 is quite a bit better than all of those. So clearly, due to the hard work of our employees, our staff, and the board, much has changed during those 3 decades. For our longer-term members, you may remember the unflattering moniker that we had of sometimes Sumter because of our less than stellar reliability. Not only was the reliability challenging, our rates were rather high compared to others in the state. Collectively, board, employees, staff, have made dramatic improvements in that reliability and in the rates for that matter. We have made significant investments in our electric facilities. We have dramatically enhanced our vegetation management program to produce the types of reliability that are almost unheard of among our peers. One of the measurements that we all use is called the System Average Interruption Duration Index. For obvious reasons, we call it SAIFI for short, or SAIDI for short. And that measures the number of minutes that an average member is without service during the year. For year-end 2020, that number for our members was 69.84 minutes. And the number of times that an average member was interrupted was a remarkably low 1.19 times. Those outage indexes really indicate the work that our employees have done to get that reliability factor under control. We do remove named storms and tornadoes from those numbers, but otherwise that reflects the good job our folks are doing. As we look toward summer, and unfortunately, summer storm season, we are, and we're proud to say, we are storm ready. I don't say that to brag, I just know that our employees and our management are storm ready. The Atlantic hurricane season officially begins June 1. Last year's hurricane season set a record for the number of named storms, and for many of them, we appeared to be ground zero. Happily, luck, fortune, whatever, most of them went other directions, and we got to go help our peers instead of having to bring them to help us. So we were lucky, or fortunate, whatever. May not be so lucky this year, so consequently, we are preparing for a full-blown storm center in 2021. We don't have predictions yet from the National Weather Service. Those will come out probably in April. Earlier this month, though, the National Weather Service announced they would start their daily tropical weather updates or alerts on May 15th as opposed to June 1st. And that's because each year for the last 2 or 3 years, we have had a named storm in May. So they're going to start their predictions a little earlier. For the last 6 hurricane seasons, a named storm in the Atlantic has formed in May. And as you know, somewhat like toilet paper during a pandemic, supplies sell out quickly, including toilet paper, but mostly water and batteries. So I would strongly recommend that you start your purchasing now for those needed storm supplies. We do have a short video that we'll play momentarily to encourage you on how to become better storm ready. So we'll play that video now.
Storm Center consists of 6 user-friendly platforms to communicate with our members about outages. It is mobile device friendly with interactive maps and a variety of notification options. The interactive map displays current outages, estimated time of restoration, crew status, start time, number of members affected, and outage cause when it's available. Use the weather overlay to see incoming storms. Check the status of an existing outage by clicking on the icon on the map. It's easy to report a new outage or check the status of an existing one. Just use your last name and house number to identify the location and click submit. It's that easy.
So we certainly encourage you to take advantage of Storm Center. It is very user-friendly. It's available 24/7 with your smartphone or tablet. And before hurricane season sets in, make sure you go online and create your outage notifications. That way, if an outage occurs in your area, you will be notified by email, text, or voice, or all 3, depending on your choices. You also have the opportunity to set do not disturb hours so that a random middle of the night outage doesn't interrupt your sleep. You can visit secoenergy.com and go over to Storm Center on the top right menu to make those choices selections. If you're not so tech savvy or you simply prefer to report an outage by phone, you can access the same functionality with our new IVR virtual assistant appropriately named Electra. You can call anytime to report a new outage or get details on an existing outage. So please take advantage of that. I mentioned 42 years at SECO, 31 as CEO, and I have to say that I have been honored and blessed to work with some of the most dedicated, capable people in our industry. Our 400 plus employees are clearly world class. They represent us very well. They provide you excellent service, which is our purpose, to provide exceptional customer service. Frankly, when I do retire early next year, the employee population is what I will miss the most because they have been great to work with. Last March, as we went into the first year of COVID, because our employees are in fact our greatest assets, and because all of them are essential workers, regardless of pandemic or whatever, they are essential. We went into a pandemic plan. Those employees who could work effectively from home were allowed to set up their workstations at home. Crews who had to be here on the job, normally we shift to based upon the workload, but to avoid any possibilities of interchanging COVID among crews, we kept our crews intact, kept them all on the same shift together to prevent any cross-location exposure. Those changes and those procedures worked exceptionally well. So I certainly salute our employees on their commitment to keeping your service functioning during a very challenging year that is still continuing this year. They were introduced earlier, but I do want to pay tribute to and thank our trustees for the roles they play in making this company as great as it is. As you heard early, we will have a new trustee effective at the adjournment of this meeting. Ms. Morgan Hatfield will join our board at that time. At this point, and I haven't warned him, I don't want to embarrass him, but we're also saying a fond farewell to a long-term board member, Mr. Jerry Hatfield. Jerry's term will end at the adjournment of this meeting. Jerry has served our cooperative for 21 years, representing our members. He has served as president, vice president, secretary treasurer, and a number of other functions. So, Jerry, I have a plaque that I will present you. I'll let Mr. Dennison make the presentation, but Jerry, thank you very much for 21 great years of service.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
If you'd like to say anything, you're welcome to.
Okay.
So we will certainly miss Jerry. He has been a significant part of our board for the last 21 years. And I do thank all of our board members and our new incoming board member, Ms. Hatfield, for their commitment to serving your needs as we move ahead. A long time ago, 1991, my first annual meeting as the CEO, probably scared to death. This building, actually the old building that was here before, was full of people. My first speech to a crowd that large, and I shared with them that my focus as the new CEO of a company that wasn't exactly functioning as well as it could would be my version of the 3 R's. And I call that rates, reliability, and responsibility. That was roughly 31 years ago, and they still have been our focus as we've moved through all of those years. And frankly, it's been much because of an extremely effective senior staff who have worked so hard to focus on those 3 R's. So you have met a couple. I would like to just quickly introduce our senior staff members. Earlier, you met Ms. Nora Brown, our executive administrator to me and the board, who has the challenging job of keeping me and the board in line at all times. She really should get combat pay for that, but she does a marvelous job of it. You also met Catherine Gloria. our Vice President of Corporate Communications and Energy Services. Obviously, her title says she is responsible for communicating to you and to the world, and she does a very, very good job. Gene Kanakovsky is our Chief Financial Officer. His job is to keep a tight rein on the dollars that our members provide us through their rates, and he does an extremely good job of that. John LaSelva, our Vice President of Operations, has the not so challenging job of building our system, maintaining our system, and putting it back together when storms bring it down. John is one of the best in the industry at that, and really has represented you well. Greg Morrell, our Vice President of Corporate Services and Human Resources. The title isn't quite fully descriptive. He is responsible for all of our assets, our people, our vehicles, and our buildings and grounds, and does a very good job of that. And finally, last but not least, our newest Vice President, Mr. Mike White, our Vice President of Engineering. His job and his team's job is to design a system capable of providing the service that we are trying to provide, and to continually monitor the performance of our existing system to see where improvements are made. So collectively, those folks are a major reason why we are as successful as we are. Each of those senior leaders plays a key role in managing our workforce and managing and controlling our cost. Speaking of cost, as we go through the financials, our financial health as a company is excellent, outstanding. Due to COVID-related issues from early March through September of last year, we suspended disconnects for non-payment, we waived all late fees, and we offered payment extensions outside of our normal parameters. Clearly, those had an impact on financials. Many more people stayed home because of the pandemic, and it showed in increased kilowatt-hour sales. Last year, our membership as a whole consumed 3.64 billion kilowatt hours. That was up 168 million from 2019, or about 5%. That growth and the continuing boom in construction in our area of all types, residential, commercial, and industrial, is the reason we have to continue spending as much investment in our plant as we are. We have to have a sound system. We also have to monitor dollars to keep our rates down, and we've done a good job of both. Looking back to 2020, excluding purchase power, our total expenses were $141 million. That was under budget by $3 million in a very, very challenging year. At the end of 2020, our total investment in utility plant was rapidly approaching the $1 billion mark. Currently, at year-end 2020, we were at about $956 million. And at the rate we're still growing, I predict we'll hit that $1 billion mark in 12 to 15 months. So be ready for that. Without question, our electric system is supported by a large, robust, and well-maintained infrastructure. It distributes the power that we purchase from our wholesale provider, Seminole Electric Cooperative. Seminole's portfolio is changing and has been changing over the recent years. They're in the process of shuttering one of the two coal plants in the next couple of years. Using much more natural gas, there's a new combined cycle facility under construction in Palatka as I speak, and they're entering into additional purchase power agreements with people that have renewable energy, particularly solar, available. So the portfolio is changing dramatically from where it historically has been, where coal was roughly 50%, to, as you see on the chart, coal dropping significantly. And speaking of solar, there is very strong interest in solar among our membership. And we are a very strong advocate or resource for members who want to explore the possibility of adding solar to their homes to reduce the amount of utility supplied power. However, the net metering approach that we have selected and has been approved by the Florida Public Service Commission is intended to not subsidize solar members at the expense of members who choose, for whatever reason, not to pursue solar. However, as a cooperative, we have more solar installations on our system than any other co-op or municipal utility in the state, except JEA in Jacksonville, a bit larger. Currently, we have about 2,300 members who have invested in solar and are interconnected with our system. If you're interested as a member, go to secoenergy.com. We have a very well-designed and recently updated section there to assist you in researching solar and the issues that go with it. And speaking of renewables and reduced energy consumption, particularly in the form of fossil fuels, gasoline, there is an emerging trend in our area for an increasing number of electric vehicles, EVs. Members who already own an EV or those who are interested in purchasing are also interested in an off-peak rate whereby they can charge those electric vehicles at a reduced cost. One of the challenges for us and for other utilities, to make that work really well, we need a fully installed AMI system or smart metering. It's a very expensive investment. As I'll mention shortly, we are exploring that. However, for the short term, once we have developed that rate, we do have an option that would allow us to offer it to a smaller number of potential members. We started an AMI pilot project in November of last year. We selected, the board approved, purchasing from Honeywell about 6,500, 6,300 meters to use with our prepaid accounts. The old meters were reaching the end of their useful life, would not work with 5G technology and had to be replaced, so they were. The board approved that purchase. It gives us a chance to test 6,300 AMI devices to see how well they work. Also, we are taking to the board Monday at the board meeting a recommendation to try another small number of AMI devices from another vendor to give us a comparison between two leading vendors in that arena. So that's a relatively quick overview. If you're in the heat like the folks behind me, it may not have been quick enough, but it covered a lot of ground. So those two words I always say in closing. I want to thank those of you watching the meeting virtually for doing so. Clearly, I always anticipated my final annual meeting address would be before the very large thousands of people we were attracting, but I'm hopeful there are thousands of people watching online. Anyway, so to them and to the small number of staff and spouses in the audience, thank you all for being here, for participating. Stay tuned at the end of the event, and we will announce the winners of those 100 prizes. But now it's my pleasure to introduce our cooperative attorney, Mr. Scott Gherkin, who will go over the results of the voting that took place prior to this meeting. Scott?
Thank you, and good afternoon. As Mr. Dennison and Mr. Duncan have referenced already, a member-approved bylaws change now gives SECO the flexibility to conduct electronic and by mail voting on annual meeting business. The two items that members voted for this year are a bylaws revision and the 2020 annual meeting minutes. Voting, as you know, was closed by our board president, Mr. Dennison, earlier this evening, and I have the certified results. Hot off the press. The member votes for the most recent board recommended bylaws revisions are as follows. 4,263 voted yes, 93 voted no, 220 abstained. Therefore, the bylaws revision is approved by the membership by an overwhelming result. The member votes for approving the 2020 annual meeting minutes are as follows: 4,368 yes, 7 no, and 201 abstain. The 2020 annual meeting minutes are also clearly approved by the membership. We thank you to all who voted and played a part in the cooperative's democratic process. Now, moving on from old business to new business, this is a normal part of the agenda that takes us into the question and answering or Q&A period for the member engagement portion of the meeting. So I will turn that back over to Mr. Duncan, our illustrious CEO.
Well, thank you, Scott. And to the members, again, there are 3 ways that you can submit your question that we'll try to get to. That's the phone number that's shown there, the email address, or on Facebook. I do have a few that we will attempt to respond, and a couple of these came in advance of the meeting. And this one is from I'm assuming a Mr. from a B. Stafford in the Villages, asking what has SECO done to prepare for the increased load on the grid that will be coming on with all the electric vehicles that will need to be charged. Well, clearly, as EVs become more and more popular, charging them becomes an additional load for our electric system, and we will be working to create that off-peak rate to entice EV owners to charge them off-peak. However, as I shared with you earlier in my comments, we are very accustomed to very rapid growth in our electrical load. We add thousands of homes and businesses every year, so we really aren't overly concerned that the load from electric vehicles will overwhelm our system. We are going to work diligently to come up with that off-peak rate that we can share. We'll not share, we can get the Public Service Commission to approve and be ready to offer that to the members. So really the question focuses on EVs, but really the bigger question is, are we prepared to deal with the growth here in Florida? And yes, we absolutely are. The next question is very, very timely. It's from a K. Hewitt in Ocala and a C. Yato in the Villages. And those of you who observed the news several weeks ago of the issues in Texas, they had unusually very cold weather, and as a result, they didn't have sufficient power supply to meet that need. They had extended outages, they had rotating blackouts. Clearly, members in Florida want to know, are we prepared to deal with that, or could they be facing that? Well, let me just say that that issue raised a lot of questions among our members and among the public. But happily, I believe the significant differences between the market in Florida and the market in Texas will provide Florida a much stronger buffer from that happening. And the primary difference is Texas is essentially a totally deregulated electric market. Customers can choose their electric provider, they can switch with very little notice, and consequently there is not a lot of regulatory oversight for those Texas utilities. In Florida, every utility in the state is regulated to some degree by the Florida Public Service Commission. The investor-owned utilities are totally regulated. Cooperatives, because our rates are set by a board that's elected by the ratepayers, we're under PSC control for certain things, but not for everything. We also have in Florida the Florida Coordinating Group, which is a generation and transmission coordinating entity to which all generating utilities must belong. Every utility in Florida is required to have an excess generation above their needs, a margin, if you will. So I feel comfortable that Florida is much better protected, much better prepared than Texas was. Further, those outlandish prices in Texas were a reflection of the deregulated market. Those who had power to sell could essentially charge whatever they could get for it, and they did, as you've read. So while I and other utility executives will never promise you 100% reliable 24/7 service availability, I'm very confident that Florida will fare much, much better than Texas did. I have a question from Susan Anderson from social media asking, do we pay different prices for electric usage during different times of the day? Currently, we do not. We have a fixed price per kilowatt hour regardless of the time of day that it's purchased. On our commercial accounts and industrial, we do have some varying rates there if they're willing to be interrupted if there is a shortage of power. As I mentioned, talking about the EVs, we are looking at time of day rates for charging electric vehicles and perhaps other functions. This is a question from B. Lawrence in Ocala. I'm a longtime supporter of your Pennies from Heaven program. What is the number of members who support the program? How many dollars are connected from members each year? Both good news and bad news. We have 7,800 members who are signed up for Pennies from Heaven. Collectively, with the rounding up of their bill to the next dollar, they contribute roughly $46,000 a year that we can then use to assist primarily through our United Ways, but other entities as well. Just imagine if we could get half of our members, 100,000. That would be roughly $50,000 a month that could be used for those good causes. So I'm lobbying right now to get more members to sign up. This is from Jay Johnson in Eustis. A very profound statement. Florida is a magnet for hurricanes. I believe if Florida utilities buried electric lines, there would be less outages after storms. Is SECO making plans to bury more electric lines? Also, some good news in that answer and some that indicates how costly it would be. Currently, because all of our developers are willing to pay the price differential between overhead service and underground service, roughly 80 to 90% of our new installations are in fact underground. Unfortunately, converting our 12,000 mile of line electric system to total underground is frankly just cost prohibitive. We're probably talking about 5 times the cost of an overhead system to put it underground, and retrofitting an existing system even more. However, we have been, as have other utilities in Florida, doing a lot of storm hardening on our system to make it more resistant to those hurricanes. Our vegetation management program is designed to try to deal with those most problematic areas. So I don't see us going total underground in the future, but all of our new installations are essentially underground. This one is from R. Lincoln in the Villages. Does SECO Energy have an app that I can use to pay my bill and view my billing statements? I almost feel like these were setup questions like you get with a friendly audience, because the answer is yes. We have our Smart Hub app whereby members can manage their account totally online. It's a mobile app. It can work on the desktop as well. Members can store payment information, subscribe to e-bill, enroll in bank draft, make a payment arrangement, enroll in Pennies from Heaven, change their mailing address, update email and phone contact information with just a few keystrokes. So it's a very easy to use app, and thousands of our members do take advantage of it. And we have a question from C. Murphy in Wildwood. Does SECO have plans to expand into the broadband market? Very popular activity across the nation in extremely rural areas. Our surveys indicate that 94 to 95% of our membership has access to broadband from other providers. Frankly, with the growth we are dealing with, we really are not able to divert resources or to add additional resources to provide a service that's already being provided by others. So at least in my remaining 9 months, I don't anticipate us pursuing broadband. This is from Barbara O'Neill in Ocala. What are you doing to build capacity for Kalesa, O-Town, and other new Ocala developments so we don't lose power in another cold winter morning in the future? Pretty simple answer. As I mentioned early in my introductions, Mike White, our VP of Engineering, and his staff are continually monitoring the load on our system, determining where we need to make upgrades. They work very closely with developers to be ready when those new developments are being planned and put into service. So we're very conscious of that growth in the Ocala-Marion County area, and frankly, we're quite ready to deal with it. This one's probably going to be an unhappy answer. Roberta Halpin from social media, do you offer rebates on updating appliances? We do not. Anything we pay out has to be paid by the rest of the members, and we have chosen not to go that route. So that's the questions I have, and I think given the virtual time that we had planned for, probably a good place to call it quits. So, as I mentioned, we are going to move into the prize recognition part of our agenda. Ms. Gloria will be announcing those from a different podium. There are 100 prizes, and some of them are extremely, not all of them are nice, but the first ones are extremely nice. So, again, I have one official duty to do. I'm not used to doing this. Normally we adjourn the business meeting before we take up the prize announcements. So I am a member of the cooperative, so I will now ask if there is a motion from another member to adjourn. I have a motion from Mr. Dennison, a second. Mr. Anderson, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Anyone opposed? Man, I had fun doing that. I don't usually get to do motions. So, again, my last annual meeting, looking forward to the next chapter starting next year, but this has been a phenomenal ride. I've enjoyed it. Look forward to the next 9 months, and thank you all for your support. Catherine, do some prizes.